Hi, I'm Daniel Lucas, and welcome to Book 101 Review. Book 101 is all about the books that I read for the last 40 years. And today I have my special guest. He retired in 2021 after a career as a broadcast journalist, press secretary to a governor, and founder and the leader of a successful public relations firm. No other than Mr. Mike Swenson.
Hi, Daniel. Thanks for having me on.
Welcome to Book 101, Mr. Mike, and can you please introduce more about yourself?
Sure. Well, I was born and raised in Kansas. I've actually never left the state, but my career allowed me to travel all over the world and experience a lot of things. As you said in the open, I set out to be a broadcast journalist, and that's what I was hoping to do my entire life. And I did that for about 6 years in both public radio and then commercial television, both in front of and behind the camera. I actually enjoyed behind the camera better, directing and producing. But then my family's always been involved in politics in Kansas, and I had an opportunity come up to come on board the guy who was currently governor, and I was covering him as a reporter. His name was John Carlin. This was in 1981. And came on board as his assistant press secretary, went through his helped him get reelected, and then served as his press secretary for 4 years. I always call that my graduate school, since I didn't go back and get a graduate degree, but I had it in those 11 years, because that was the basis for me getting into public relations and eventually starting a firm that I just retired from, and as you said, in 2021. And our PR firm really special. We did all the traditional things that PR firms do, but we had two specialties. One was cause marketing, where we helped partner companies and nonprofits together to do good. And then the other was crisis management. And that's the one that we're really here to talk about today for the most part. Having been a reporter and having worked in a political environment like a governor's office, you face crises of differing sizes all the time. And so I learned a lot about that and took that with me. And in terms of people we hired for the PR firm, that was always something we trained people in to make sure that they were ready to help our clients. We considered crisis management to be the most important PR we do because everything else doesn't work. All the good PR you do doesn't work if you don't handle a crisis well.
Mr. Mike Swenson, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world. And let's talk about navigating the storm. What types of crisis, personal, professional, global, does your framework address? What unites them as a storms?
Well, and I like the way you frame that because crises can occur to people. To you and I have faced crises in our lives, and the word crisis, sometimes people think of it as something giant, and that's true. But there's all kinds of levels of crises. But it could be people, it could be a business, it could be a not-profit, it could be any organization that is out there trying to make it in the world is going to run into a bad time. And what we found over time was that a lot of companies just frankly weren't prepared. If they're a manufacturing company, they obviously had plans in place to continue business continuity. But a lot of times they didn't think about how they're going to communicate during a crisis, communicate with their customers, with their vendors, with their employees. I should say those first, with their employees, and then of course with the public at large through media and now social media. And so we were hired by a restaurant chain in the early 90s, and they were growing fast. And the head of their PR and I were talking one day, and she said, I'm really concerned that we aren't really ready to handle a crisis. And when you have a restaurant chain that's in multiple states, it only takes one person at one restaurant to do something that could become a brand problem globally. For the entire brand. And so we sat in a room for about 3 days, her team and our team, and created a process that we eventually called Crisis Track. And it's one that we use not only with them and for them all the time, but then we took it and used it with other clients as well. And that's what I now that since I've retired, I've taken that and trying to get it out there and offer it to people. It's a very simple process that allows any organization to really create their own crisis plan in the matter of a couple of days.
Simple process but effective, people. How does your approach move to past generic, stay strong, advice to offer actionable navigation tactics?
There are 5 steps to this, and I'll just go through them very quickly. But the first step is to assemble your team, and you have to create a crisis team in your within your organization. And if you're a small organization, I mean, if you're 10 employees, you may have every employee may be a part of it. If you're a larger company, mid-sized to larger companies, then you want to look at your organization and make sure that all the key areas of your organization are represented. So you put that team together. I recommend no more than 10 people. 8 to 10 is tops. I really prefer 8. And you put that team together, and then we get with that team in a room, and we do 3 things. We first of all ask them to come prepared to discuss all the things that can go wrong. And what's interesting, Daniel, and it never failed to happen, is you will come in with your list. I'll come in with my list. Our colleagues will come in with their list. Some of those will overlap, but every time we did this process, inevitably I'd come up with something. Daniel, you might say, I never thought about that, because wasn't in your purview. And so, but all of a sudden, and then by the time we're done, and it takes usually spend about an hour on that part of the process, maybe a little more. We've got the whole room lined up with big giant Post-it notes with all the things that can go wrong. And it's sobering for everyone in the room, because now they realize that there's many things that could go wrong. And now at least we at least have established, now we understand what can go wrong. Second step, we ask them to take a recent crisis event and map it out from beginning to end, all the steps they took. We do that, we set that aside, and then I say, now let's create a map, communications map of what we want to do. And that ends up being inevitably streamlined more than what they did before. There's not people doing the same job 3 times during a crisis. And now we have all our risks identified. We have a mapping process map that we know what steps we're going to take. And then the final step is that we create messages for each of those risks that we identified. We don't do that in that many. We do about 3 or 4, and then our team would go back and create the messages. So at the end of the day, you now have a crisis team. Everybody knows that they're on it. You understand everything can go wrong. You have a process in place that you now know what steps you're going to take from the beginning. And you now have key messages, because in this day and age with social media, the crisis goes on fire like that. And you have to be ready to say something right out of the chute, because you never want to say no comment or we'll get back to you later. You got to have something to say. That's why we create those messages up front. Final step is we train the spokesperson, the media spokesperson, who will be front and center for the most part, make sure they're prepared to handle the media.
Mr. Mike, is calmness during chaos a skill, a mindset, or both? How do you cultivate it?
It's a good question. I think it is a little bit of both, because I think there are people who are built to handle crises, and I think you and I could probably go through our Rolodex in our minds and think of people who just they've got it. They understand how to remain calm, but it is definitely learned as well, and that's part of what I think our approach to crisis always was to help calm our clients down, to say, okay, we've got all these things in place now. So the moment something happens, we know the first 3 things we're going to do. We know what the first messages are going to be. So now we can calm down and manage the crisis. And I think, so that's part of what I think and obviously we would run into people who were just great at it from the beginning, to your point about knowing it, but we were also able to really help people. And that's what the process does. It's a calming effect, because there's some confidence now that we're not going to be just running it by the seat of our pants.
How do you simplify voices when overwhelmed, like frameworks, delegation, or filters?
What the one point I didn't mention, I think this gets to your question, is the crisis team. One person that is not going to head up the crisis team is the CEO or the whatever the title is, president, CEO of the organization. That person needs to appoint someone to be the leader of that crisis team, and so that's the first big delegation that has to occur. Is because we don't want the CEO. We need the CEO to be able to be a spokesperson at important points during the crisis. And the other thing is if the CEO steps in and runs the crisis, a lot of people will just defer to whatever that person wants. So you need to have a crisis team that's got a little bit of a buffer from the CEO and let the leader of the crisis team speak to the CEO. So that's important. The other thing about delegation is that your 8 people now that are managing the crisis are now spending most of their time on that. Who's making sure the company, the organization is still doing what it's supposed to be doing on a daily basis? And so you have a secondary team which is assigned to take over the tasks and the responsibilities of the crisis team members, so that the most important thing during a crisis is that your organization continues to run efficiently, effectively, and with as little chaos as possible.
Mr. Mike, how do you prioritize what protect, like time, morale, or capital when everything feels urgent?
Yeah, everything is like 1 and 1A and 1B. It seems like, because you do have to, but that's part of why you do have a crisis team, because you're going to have representatives of all the key areas in your organization on that team, and they will bring their, so the person in charge of finance has somebody on that team, and so they will be mindful of, okay, what is this doing to our bottom line? If it's a company, if it's a nonprofit, it's what is it doing to our effectiveness to be able to deliver the services we promise. And so you've got that mindset always there, and making sure that's why you have that secondary team too, to make sure everything's still running right. But I think it's hard to say something's more important than another. They're all important. What I have always thought about, though, is that there's one thing that is the most important thing for any company, good times or bad, and that's their reputation. We talk about brands, and brands are how people think about an organization, what they feel, rather what they feel about an organization. I was always focused on reputation in the PR world. What do people think of you? Are you an organization that they respect, that they want to work with and do business with, and donate to if it's a nonprofit? Do you walk the walk and talk the talk? And that's your reputation, and it's always constantly changing. So a crisis is the test of that, is the true test of a company's, organization's reputation. If they have invested before the crisis hits, if they have been doing things the right way, they've been operating in a ethical way, they treat their people well, they treat their customers well, they do things the right way, they build up what I like to think of as a savings account. And so when a crisis hits, you got to reach in and grab some of that savings, that capital out, a reputational capital out, and use it. And if you haven't built that up along the way, then when a crisis hits, you're likely to hit hard times. There was a great example of a company. My time-space continuum is not very good, but it's probably about 10 or 15 years ago, that was a vendor to restaurants. And I mean, they gave products to lots of restaurants and food service companies. It was a food-based company. And they had a real problem with how they were, the hygiene of their plants was not good. And they caused they caused some problems in terms of E. coli and things like that. And it affected 300 or 350 brands. And so that company, by the way, ended up going out of business because they were not a good company. They had not built that savings account up to where when something bad happened to them, they were done in a very short period of time. So that can happen. And that's why it's important to be consciously working on your reputation, building it up, investing in it, because something bad is going to happen to you at some point, and you can weather it easier if people like you, respect you, and want to see you get through the crisis well.
Very well said, Mr. Mike. Beautifully articulated.
Thank you.
How do you know when to adapt your course versus to stay the path media storm?
Past the media storm.
Yes, path mid storm.
Hmm. I think what we always what we learned when we developed this process is because again it went back to a client coming to us saying we don't think we're ready, and so we got together and help them create a process that we eventually also use for everyone else. And the reason I love this process is because it is simple and can be done quickly and give people the confidence that we now have, we know what, when bad things happen, we know that we're going to be able to weather it because we've got a process in place and we're confident. And I think that is, that will, and what I just talked about investing in your reputation in a positive way all the time is the antidote to something bad harming your organization if something bad happens.
Mr. Mike, as a founder of leader of successful public relations firm, what are your short-term and long-term goals?
Well, we built the firm, started it as part of an ad agency that had existed for several years, and they did not have a PR firm and wanted it. So this was back in the late 1980s, and we started out really just as a local firm doing work with local companies, and then as we grew together, so we would do PR for the ad agency clients, but the founder of that agency, when he hired me, said, I want you to go get business on your own. I want you to get at least half your business on your own. Because he's an entrepreneur and he wanted to start a business. And we did that. And so in the first year, we that was our focus in the first couple of years was to, make a profit, obviously, but more importantly, to go out and get half our business on our own. So we put a system in place that helped us identify and attract a lot of clients early on and got us started. And then the thing that the foundational message that I always thought about was this, that as you approach communications to the public and however you do it through media or social media or whatever, is that you need to have a single voice, you need to speak with a single voice, and you need to have a simple message. And that may seem, trite, but it's so true. And what we would go into that mindset with all of our clients is, okay, they have say a client has a big product announcement and they're rolling out a new product. Well, they could talk about the 27 things that product does, or we could focus in and say, here's the 2 things or 3 things that this product will do for you. And focus in on those 3, even though there's 24 of the things it can do for you. And to make sure that we speak with a single voice, we got to make sure that we get all of our employees and members of the organization in line. Here's what we're going to say about it. So if you're ever asked about it when you're out having coffee with a friend, here's the things to say about it. And so that we're all speaking with that single voice, simple message. And so that was always kind of our foundation for when we went into any project. And that became especially true with crisis, because it's even more important during a crisis that you have very much the mindset of, we got to keep this message as simple as possible. And the way you do that, Daniel, is to really answer 3 questions with every statement you put out during a crisis to keep that message simple. It's what happened. So we're constantly updating as we're moving through the days of the crisis. What happened and what progress have we made? What are we doing about it to mitigate the damage? And third, how does this impact you, depending on who we're talking to? It could be their customers, it could be the public at large. But it's like you keep answering those 3 questions and build your statements out of those 3 questions. And that helps you keep very focused and keep the message simple and allows you to really speak with a single voice, because you can hand that to anybody in the company and say, okay, here's the latest. And this is how we're going to address this crisis to the rest of the world until we have a new message.
Good luck to your goals, Mr. Mike, and we are looking forward for more and more success. What would be your piece of advice for those people out there want to be entrepreneur like you?
I took one of those tests once that tests your, who you are and what you're about, and it came back that I had a 98% sense of urgency. and when the people that work with me heard that, they go, okay, now we get it. And that was the purpose of us doing that, was to help us understand each other and how do we work together. And so I've always adopted that and talked about that when I would talk to prospective employees, college students on campuses, when I go speak, is that it's important to have a sense of urgency, particularly in our business, but I think in any business. And sense of urgency doesn't mean speed only. Yes, it's good to get things done on time. We always got to make sure we meet deadlines. But it's also the sense of urgency to not assume the first idea we have is the best idea. To make sure that it's not just about the big idea, but it's about the small ideas. The details matter. And so there, to me, that sense of urgency is I want to make this the best project it can be. I want to meet the deadlines on time. I want to make it the best idea possible. So let's make sure it is the best idea. And then how do we bring it to life? And that's the details. And we got to make sure we don't miss anything. And that's how we approached our work with clients. And I'm proud to say that since I've been gone, the company continues to operate along that way, because that's the foundation we all built.
Mr. Mike, before we wrap up our discussion for today, I'm inviting you to please do listen to my other podcast, because my abstract essay is already in 5th season, abstract poetry in 2nd season, and my book 101 review in 5th season too, comedy 101 in 2nd season, and food 101 in its 5th season as well, geography 101 4th season, and my baby podcast law 101 and mental health 101, love letters in 3rd season, and movie 101 review and music 101 in its 4th season, and science 101 and sex 101 in its 1st season. Please listen to them wherever you listen to your podcasts. Mr. Mike, what practices help extract wisdom from crisis without glorifying suffering?
Just wisdom about crisis itself, crisis management.
Yes, please.
I think if people understood how easy it really is to get prepared and have a plan in place, they would do it. But I think it's one of those things that it always gets put to the back burner because nothing bad has happened lately. So until something bad happens, and that's the problem, though, Daniel, is that if you're not prepared as an organization to manage it, in this day and age with social media, where we have instantaneous news and we're all journalists with our phones and cameras, you have to be prepared. And if you're not, then it's not going to go well. You may stumble through it and get lucky and get through it by managing, in the moment. But if you've got a plan in place, you've got messages in place, you've got your team set, they know what they're supposed to be doing. It's not hard to do, but I think it just has always been hard to convince people that they need to take time to do that. And they need to. Companies need to do it. Individuals need to do it. And to CEOs out there who might be listening, you should be the ones leading your company to make sure you are prepared, not just from a operations point of view, but from a communications point of view to deal with bad things when they happen.
Mr. Mike Swenson, thank you so much for sharing your business to the world. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world. So can you please invite our listeners to support your advocacy, your business, or any projects that you're doing right now?
Well, sure. I thank you. I appreciate the opportunity. They can find me on LinkedIn, and on LinkedIn, I have a lot of crisis content on there that can be of interest to people to kind of get a better feel for why you need to do this. Crisistrack.com is the website. We're offering a discount right now. We'd like to get people going on it. We've just launched it in the last few months. So we're offering that discount for a little bit longer. And then I can't believe how many podcasts you have. I'm in the second season with my partner, Sam Mears, who owns an agency here in town as well. We have the second season of Kansas City Marketing Legends. One podcast is keeping us busy, Daniel, so I applaud you.
Thank you so much. Yes, people, let's support Mr. Mike Swenson, because if you support him, more and more and more empowering coaching to come, and more empowering episodes for the podcast itself, and for sure more and more empowering advocacy more to come. So Mr. Mike Swenson, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Daniel, and thanks to all your listeners.
More to come, people. See you soon.